No, it's not a rhetorical question. It's a real challenge, brutal, uncomfortable, and almost impossible to answer honestly. Because surviving isn't just about continuing to breathe. It's about enduring hunger, fear, the smell of death, and, above all, the uncertainty of not knowing if tomorrow exists. Now imagine this. You wake up in 1563, in London. Not the vibrant London we know today, but a city suffocated by the bubonic plague. A place where every corner could be your last, where the sound of carts carrying bodies is already part of the routine, and where the simple act of opening your front door could mean your sentence. Do you really think you could survive? Watch the video, but more than watching, feel it. Observe the details. Imagine the smell, the strange silence interrupted by distant screams, the faces marked by fear. Because this isn't just a history lesson, it's a test of imagination, and perhaps of courage. The sun had barely begun its ascent over the intricate, often haphazard, skyline of London, its nascent light struggling to pierce the perpetual haze that clung to the city. Yet, even before the full promise of dawn, the sprawling metropolis was already a hive of activity. A vibrant, restless entity that defied the early hour. It was the heart of summer in 1563. A season typically associated with warmth and abundance, but soon to be etched into the collective memory as a period of profound dread. The rhythm of life, usually a predictable cadence of commerce and daily survival, was about to be irrevocably altered. The very air, a complex and ever-present tapestry of scents, carried the comforting, almost nostalgic aroma of fresh-baked bread, wafting from the numerous bakeries that dotted the city. This familiar fragrance, however, mingled inextricably with the pungent, often overwhelming, odor of open sewers, which snaked through the narrow thoroughfares and the accumulated refuse that lay in festering piles along the streets. Interspersed were the acrid, biting notes of wood smoke, rising in countless plumes from the hearths of homes and workshops, creating a unique and unmistakable olfactory signature for the sprawling, densely packed urban landscape. Carriages and carts, their wooden wheels groaning and creaking under the weight of their loads, rumbled incessantly over the uneven, often broken, cobblestones of the city's labyrinthine streets. Their passage was a constant, percussive rhythm in the ceaseless urban symphony, a backdrop to the human drama unfolding. Merchants, their voices already hoarse and strained from hours of tireless hawking, loudly proclaimed the virtues of their wares, their cries echoing through the dense network of alleys and lanes, vying for attention amidst the din, the collective murmur of hundreds of thousands of lives, each pursuing its own daily struggle, its own small ambition, intertwined into a chaotic, yet strangely harmonious melody, a testament to London's ceaseless vitality and its indomitable spirit. Thomas, a young scribe's apprentice, a man of 28 years, stood by the narrow-leaded glass window of his small, humble room. Their dwelling, a house of timber and plaster, leaned precariously on Fish Street, its upper stories jutting out over the thoroughfare below, a common architectural feature designed to maximize living space in the densely packed city, creating shadowed, often damp, passages beneath. His pen, still dry and poised, rested upon a blank sheet of precious parchment, a silent invitation to the words that, on many mornings, seemed to elude his grasp, dancing just beyond his reach. Yet, the vibrant, tumultuous life unfolding outside his window. That indeed was a poem in constant, unpredictable motion, an inexhaustible source of inspiration and profound observation for his sensitive, contemplative soul. He often found himself lost in the intricate details of the street below, the fleeting expressions on faces, the subtle shifts in the crowd's mood, all fodder for the verses he secretly longed to write. Alara, his wife, was already awake and diligently at work, her presence a comforting anchor in their small world. The soft, rhythmic sound of her needle-piercing fabric, a steady, almost meditative hum, was, for Thomas, the sweetest morning melody he knew, a counterpoint to the city's cacophony. She was a skilled seamstress, her nimble fingers transforming plain linen and coarse wool into garments that, for many, represented a significant luxury, a mark of status or a necessity for warmth. Her rich brown hair, still unbound and flowing freely, caught the faint, early light filtering through the window, creating a soft, warm glow that contrasted gently with the focused intensity she dedicated to her craft. Her brow often furrowed in concentration. The life shared by Thomas and Alara was a delicate, intricate dance between the demands of hard, often relentless work and the fleeting, cherished moments of small, simple pleasures. Their existence was a testament to the resilience required to thrive, or merely survive, in a city that offered both immense opportunity and crushing hardship. Thomas spent his days in the bustling, often dusty, office of Master Elias, a respected scrivener whose reputation for meticulousness was well known. His tasks involved the painstaking, often monotonous, copying of legal documents, official letters, and, on rare and treasured occasions, some ancient or rare manuscript, a task that brought a flicker of intellectual joy. It was a profession that demanded immense patience, an unwavering attention to detail, and an impeccably precise hand. each stroke of the quill a deliberate act. Yet, deep within his soul, Thomas harbored secret dreams of crafting his own stories, of weaving his own verses, of leaving a more personal, lasting mark on the world. But the harsh, unyielding reality of London in 1563 was a demanding master. One that required continuous, unwavering attention and effort simply for the sake of daily sustenance, pushing artistic aspirations to the periphery, descending the creaking well-worn stairs to their small, shared kitchen. The comforting aroma of simmering oatmeal porridge and the subtle, earthy fragrance of herbal tea awaited them. A simple but nourishing start to the day. Mistress Agnes, their neighbor from the floor below, was already out in the street, her voice, hoarse from years of incessant chatter and fervent prayer, a familiar and constant presence in the neighborhood. She was engaged in an animated conversation with the local baker, her hands gesturing emphatically, her words a stream of local gossip and pious pronouncements. Her son, John, a lively boy of 10 with wide, curious eyes that missed nothing, darted playfully after a scruffy, mangy dog, a vivid personification of innocent childhood joy and boundless energy. Utterly oblivious to the underlying anxieties and unspoken fears that often permeated the adult world around him, his laughter, bright and clear, was a momentary balm. Life in London was an intricate, tightly woven tapestry of neighbors, a cacophony of diverse smells and sounds, and the omnipresent, comforting, yet sometimes imposing, presence of the church. The spires of countless churches pierced the skyline, their bells marking the hours and the solemnity of religious observances. The taverns, even at this early hour, were already beginning to fill with laborers seeking a morning ale before their arduous day began, a brief respite before the grind. The sprawling markets in Cheapside, the very heart of London's commerce, were already brimming with an abundance of fresh fruits, crisp vegetables, glistening fish, and various cuts of meat, a vibrant, colorful display of the city's commercial heart, a testament to its endless appetite. In the distance, the formidable, ancient silhouette of the Tower of London rose majestically. Its stone walls, a silent, unyielding reminder of the power and authority of Queen Elizabeth I, who governed with a firm yet generally just hand over a kingdom in constant political and social effervescence. Navigating treacherous waters, both at home and abroad, Thomas carefully picked up his worn leather satchel, containing his essential tools, his inkwell, a selection of finely cut quills, and several sheets of precious parchment, each a potential canvas for words. He bid farewell to Alara with a quick, tender kiss on her cheek, a small gesture of affection amidst the daily rush, promising to procure some fresh bread from the baker on his return journey home, a simple domestic task. He stepped out into the bustling street, immediately immersed in the surging, often overwhelming, tide of the morning crowd. The narrow streets, barely wide enough for a single cart to pass without scraping against the projecting upper stories of the houses, formed a bewildering labyrinth of humanity, animals, and conveyances. He deftly dodged treacherous puddles of mud, remnants of the previous night's rain or simply overflowing gutters, and carefully navigated around mounds of refuse that often spilled from overflowing bins. A constant, stark reminder of the city's precarious and often appalling hygiene. The air, thick with the exhalations of thousands, felt heavy and close. Yet, despite these pervasive challenges, an undeniable, vibrant energy permeated the air, a deep-seated resilience that seemed to define the Londoner's spirit. London was a city that truly never slept, a pulsating heart of commerce, ambition, and relentless life, a veritable cauldron where countless individual struggles and collective aspirations simmered, always on the verge of boiling over. Inside Master Eliza's office, a sanctuary of quiet industry and scholarly pursuit, the distinct, comforting scent of ancient parchment and fresh ink was profoundly reassuring to Thomas. Master Elias, a man of 60 years, possessed a neatly trimmed gray beard that framed a face etched with experience, and eyes that had witnessed the ebb and flow of many decades. Holding a quiet wisdom, he had meticulously imparted to Thomas all he knew about the intricate art of scrivening and the paramount importance of absolute precision in every stroke of the pen, every carefully formed letter. Master Elias, without lifting his gaze from a ledger filled with meticulous accounts, his brow furrowed in concentration, greeted Thomas, acknowledging his punctuality with a curt nod. There was an urgent task awaiting, the will of Lord Harrington, who was reported to be ill. The word ill hung heavy in the air, laden with a somber weight that Thomas did not yet fully comprehend, a weight that seemed to settle deep in his chest. Illnesses were, of course, commonplace in London. Recurrent fevers, persistent coughs, the dreaded sweating sickness that periodically swept through the population. But there was a subtly different tone in Master Elias's voice, a fleeting shadow that Thomas could not quite identify, a subtle premonition of something far more sinister and pervasive than the usual ailments, a whisper of a deeper, more widespread threat. Thomas spent the entire day meticulously copying the will, letter by painstaking letter, word by precise word. The parchment felt cool and smooth beneath his hand, the ink flowing steadily from his quill, His hand ached with the effort, the muscles cramping from the sustained concentration, but his focus remained absolute, solely on the task at hand. Each character a small victory. As the day drew to a close and the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the office, Master Elias dismissed him, instructing him to rest in preparation for the next day's inevitable work, which he hinted might be even more demanding. As Thomas walked back towards his home, the light fading rapidly, he began to notice a subtle yet unsettling change in the city's demeanor. The streets, which would ordinarily be teeming with people returning from their labors or heading to the taverns for an evening's respite, were noticeably emptier, a quiet that felt unnatural. A strange, creeping silence began to insinuate itself amidst the usual urban bustle, a silence that seemed to absorb other sounds. He observed a woman weeping openly at her doorstep, her grief a raw, public display that drew no comfort from passersby. Further on, a man, his face starkly pale and etched with fear, hurried past with an urgent, almost frantic pace, his eyes darting nervously, as if fleeing from an invisible, unseen menace that pursued him relentlessly. The usual evening sounds of laughter and music from the taverns were muted, almost absent. Upon arriving home, Ilara awaited him, diligently sewing by the flickering light of a single candle, its flame casting dancing shadows on the walls. She immediately noticed his delay and the palpable apprehension etched upon his face, her own expression mirroring his concern. Thomas recounted the unsettling quietness of the streets, the pervasive feeling that people were deeply uneasy, a sense of foreboding hanging heavy in the air, thick and suffocating. Ilara sighed, her own anxieties confirming Thomas's observations. She had overheard hushed conversations in the market earlier that day, whispers about the great sickness that had reportedly arrived, with cases already confirmed in Sutherland. More alarmingly, even within the protective confines of the city walls, the great sickness, the bubonic plague. The very name echoed in Thomas's mind like a mournful death knell, a chilling pronouncement of doom. It was not the first time London had faced the scourge of the plague, but the vivid, chilling stories his parents had recounted about previous epidemics, tales of swift, agonizing death and widespread panic, were more than enough to send a shiver of icy dread through his veins, chilling him to the bone. Thomas murmured his disbelief, his once solid faith beginning to waver before the stark, terrifying reality of the impending tragedy. He wanted to deny it, to dismiss it as mere rumor. Ilara, however, confronted him with the undeniable truth, her voice low and serious. Mistress Agnes was already lighting countless candles and praying incessantly, her devotion a desperate plea to a seemingly indifferent heaven. She had also witnessed a red cross, stark and ominous, painted on the door of the miller's house, just on the street behind them. A red cross, the sign, the unmistakable, terrifying sign that death had entered that home, and that everyone within its walls was, in essence, condemned, sealed off from the world, awaiting their fate. Fear, which had previously been a distant, abstract shadow, now began to materialize, tightening its icy grip around Thomas's chest with an overwhelming, suffocating force, stealing his breath. That night, sleep proved to be an elusive, unwelcome visitor. The city's silence was deeper, more profound, more oppressive than anything Thomas had ever experienced, a heavy blanket of dread. He heard the distant, mournful barking of dogs, their cries echoing in the stillness, and, occasionally, the muffled, heart-wrenching cry of someone in distress, a sound that pierced the quiet. With each soft cough from Ilara beside him, his heart leaped wildly, fearing the absolute worst, imagining the insidious disease already taking root within her, within their sanctuary. The days that followed blurred into a continuous, agonizing stretch of escalating apprehension. News of the plague's relentless advance spread like wildfire through dry straw, consuming all hope in its path, leaving only ashes of despair. More and more stark red crosses appeared on the doors of houses, each one a chilling testament to the disease's inexorable march, a grim tally of the fallen. The once vibrant bustle of the city was utterly replaced by an eerie, suffocating silence, a vacuum where life had once thrived, broken only by the incessant, mournful tolling of the church bells, which now seemed to ring without end, a constant dirge, and by the chilling, guttural cries of the death-bearers as they made their grim, solitary rounds, their voices hoarse with their terrible duty. Thomas still made his way to Master Elias's office, but the volume of work had drastically diminished. The once busy scrivener's office was now quiet, almost deserted. People were no longer concerned with wills or contracts. Their sole preoccupation was survival, the most basic and primal instinct. Master Elias, ever the pragmatist, began to wear a vinegar-soaked cloth over his nose and mouth, explaining that it was a measure to ward off the bad air, the miasma believed to carry the disease. Though Thomas knew that his master did not entirely subscribe to such popular superstitions, it was, more accurately, a precautionary measure, a small, desperate gesture of hope amidst the overwhelming uncertainty, a ritual to reclaim some control. Thomas, following suit, began to do the same. The sharp, sour smell of vinegar became the pervasive, unsettling perfume of that dreadful summer, a scent that would forever be associated with fear. Alara, for her part, found herself busier than ever, though her work was now tinged with a profound sadness. People, in their utter desperation, sought new clothes for the endless stream of funerals, or even garments they believed might offer some form of protection, clinging to the superstitious notion that certain fabrics or colors could somehow ward off the disease. She worked tirelessly, her nimble fingers moving with practiced speed, but her eyes, though focused on her stitches, clearly showed the deep wariness and pervasive fear that reflected the suffocating tension, hanging heavy over the entire city, a burden shared by all. Mistress Agnes, their neighbor, was now in a state of constant, fervent religious devotion. She lit countless candles, their small flames flickering in the gloom, recited endless prayers, her voice a low murmur, and meticulously hung dried herb amulets on her door. Utterly convinced that the plague was a direct, divine punishment for humanity's collective sins, a wrathful judgment from God. Her son, John, once so full of life and joy, was now quiet, his wide, curious eyes filled with a profound, unsettling fear, absorbing the terror that relentlessly surrounded him, his childhood innocence slowly eroding. Thomas, witnessing this, found himself adrift, unsure of what to believe. Was it truly divine punishment, or merely the cruel, indifferent nature of the world, a random act of fate? His faith, once so solid and unwavering, began to falter and crack in the stark, unforgiving face of death, leaving him questioning everything. One morning, Master Elias assigned Thomas a different, more perilous task. He needed Thomas to go to the apothecary, Master Gregory, to request more of the rue and wormwood tincture, which was widely believed to help purify the blood and ward off illness. Thomas nodded, picking up his satchel with a heavy heart, his stomach churning with apprehension. The mere thought of venturing out into the streets filled him with an icy dread, a paralyzing fear. But he knew he could not refuse his master's request, for their survival depended on it. The streets were eerily deserted, a stark contrast to their usual bustling activity. The vibrant tapestry of London life had unraveled. Shops were shuttered, their wooden doors barred and locked, silent monuments to a halted commerce, their windows dark and uninviting. The market, once a vibrant, swirling vortex of life and trade, was now a desolate ghost of its former self, with only a handful of desperate vendors daring to risk offering their meager goods, their voices subdued, their faces drawn. The silence was deafening, an oppressive weight that pressed down on Thomas' visage, broken only by the mournful whistle of the wind as it snaked between the buildings and occasionally by the distant, somber tolling of the church bells, a constant reminder of the dead. Then, Thomas heard it, the sound that would become the chilling, unforgettable anthem of that summer, a sound that would haunt his dreams. Bring out your dead. Bring out your dead. A cart, pulled by a single, emaciated horse, its ribs showing, lumbered slowly down the street, its wheels groaning under a terrible burden. Two men, their faces grimly covered with cloths and their hands encased in thick gloves, their figures shrouded in a macabre anonymity, were methodically piling bodies, each wrapped in a simple shroud, onto the cart. The sight was utterly macabre, a grotesque tableau of death, a scene that seemed to belong to a nightmare, and the stench of mortality, even from a distance, was nauseating. Clinging to the very air, a foul, sweet odor that burned his nostrils. Thomas instinctively cowered against a cold stone wall, desperately trying to make himself invisible, to shrink from the horror, wishing with all his being that the horrific scene would simply vanish from his memory, never to return, never to be replayed in his mind. He finally reached Master Gregory's shop. The apothecary, a corpulent man with a perpetually worried face, his features etched with exhaustion, and hands stained with various herbs and tinctures, was alone in his shop, which had once been bustling with customers, now a quiet, empty space. Master Gregory sighed deeply, rubbing his forehead in a gesture of profound weariness. His shoulders slumped, as Thomas explained Master Elias's request. Everyone, it seemed, wanted the tincture, the amulets, the bloodletting, anything that offered a glimmer of hope. No one truly knew what to do, and the plague was claiming lives at a rate far faster than he could possibly prepare his meager remedies, his efforts feeling futile. He visibly shuddered as he mentioned the buboes, the painful, grotesque swellings in the groin, armpits, and neck, which were the unmistakable, terrifying sign of the disease, a mark of death. Thomas had heard the chilling stories, but had never actually witnessed one, and he prayed fervently that he never would, that the image would remain abstract. Master Gregory, with a bitter, humorless laugh that held no mirth, questioned the popular notion of divine punishment, instead pointing to the pervasive dirt in the streets and the contaminated water as far more likely causes, a voice of reason in a superstitious age. But who, he mused, would believe a simple apothecary when everyone else was desperately praying to God, seeking solace in faith rather than science? He handed Thomas a small flask containing the dark, murky tincture, advising him to exercise extreme caution. to meticulously wash his hands, to scrupulously avoid crowds, and, yes, to pray, but never to forget the importance of common sense, of practical measures. Thomas thanked him and departed, the heavy flask feeling like a lead weight in his hand, a burden of responsibility. Master Gregory's advice echoed persistently in his mind. Common sense, but how could one possibly maintain common sense when terror was a palpable, suffocating presence, when death seemed to lurk insidiously around every single corner, an unseen predator? Upon returning home, Thomas witnessed a scene that instantly froze his blood, turning his limbs to ice. The door of Mistress Annis's house was starkly marked with a red cross, crudely painted but undeniably clear. His heart pounded violently in his chest, a frantic drumbeat of dread. No, it simply could not be. He rushed to his own door, knocking on it with frantic urgency, his knuckles raw. Ilara opened it, her face pale and drawn, her eyes wide with fear, already aware of the unfolding tragedy. She had seen the city men earlier, delivering the devastating news that John had a fever. And now, the cross, Mistress, Agnes and John, trapped, condemned. The anguish that gripped Thomas was unbearable, a crushing weight that stole his breath and made his head spin. He could faintly hear Annis's muffled, heart-wrenching sobs emanating from within her house, a sound of pure, unadulterated grief. That night, the city seemed to descend into an even deeper, more profound silence, a silence that felt heavy with unspoken sorrow. The wind howled mournfully, a desolate cry, and Thomas could have sworn he heard John's faint cries, though he knew, deep down, it was likely just his tormented imagination, his mind playing cruel tricks. Ilara and Thomas clung to each other, fear uniting them in a desperate, silent embrace, their bodies trembling. They knew, with a chilling certainty, that they could do nothing. The city's law, cruel but deemed necessary, strictly forbade them from approaching, lest they to be marked. For those trapped within their homes, it was an undeniable sentence of death, a slow, agonizing wait for the inevitable. The ensuing days stretched into a slow, agonizing eternity, each one indistinguishable from the last, marked only by the rising and setting of the sun. They listened, helpless, to the sounds emanating from Mistress Annis's house, the intermittent crying, the periods of chilling silence, then the crying once more, a cycle of despair, until, one day, the silence became absolute, permanent, a silence that spoke volumes. The men of the death cart eventually came. They broke down the door, their movements grim and efficient, devoid of emotion, and carried out the bodies. Thomas could not bring himself to look, averting his gaze, his stomach churning. Ilara held him tightly, and they wept together, not just for Agnes and John, but for all the countless souls being taken, and for the terrifying, ever-present fear that they themselves would be next, that their turn was coming. London had transformed into a veritable ghost town, a desolate shell of its former self, stripped of its vibrancy. The once bustling streets were now utterly empty. Commerce had ground to a complete halt, the lifeblood of the city drained away. The vibrant hum of activity that had once defined the city was replaced by an oppressive, suffocating silence, a vacuum where life had once thrived, broken only by the incessant, mournful tolling of funeral bells, which now seemed to ring without end, a constant dirge for the dying, and by the chilling, guttural cries of the death-bearers as they made their grim, solitary rounds, their voices hoarse with their terrible duty, their faces hidden. With each passing day, more and more stark red crosses appeared on doors, each one a fresh testament to the plague's relentless, indiscriminate advance, a grim tally of the fallen, a map of sorrow. Master Elias had, with a heavy heart, closed his office. The decision had been difficult, but necessary. There was no work to be done, no documents to copy, and remaining open was simply too dangerous, a needless risk. He instructed Thomas to stay at home, to protect his wife above all else, to prioritize their safety. Thomas spent his days confined within their small house with Alada, desperately trying to keep the flickering flame of hope alive. Though it often threatened to extinguish, they read passages from the Bible, seeking solace in Scripture, recounted old stories to each other, clinging to memories of better times. And Thomas, in moments of quiet despair, attempted to write some verses, though the words often felt hollow and meaningless in the stark, overwhelming face of death's reality, a futile gesture. Food became increasingly scarce and prohibitively expensive. The few markets that dared to remain open sold their meager provisions at exorbitant prices, exploiting the desperation of the populace. A cruel irony. Ilara, with her skilled hands as a seamstress, still managed to secure some work. But these opportunities were few and far between, a dwindling resource. They often exchanged some of her finished garments for food with neighbors who were still alive and willing to trade, engaging in a desperate daily struggle for mere survival, a constant negotiation for existence. Fear was no longer an abstract concept. It was a constant, suffocating presence within their home, a tangible entity that permeated every corner. Every cough, every sneeze, every minor ache in their bodies was immediately interpreted as a terrifying sign of impending doom. a harbinger of the plague. They meticulously checked each other constantly, their hearts pounding with dread, their hands trembling, searching for any telltale swelling, any suspicious spot on the skin. Each inspection, a moment of agonizing suspense, a test of their resolve. One afternoon, as Thomas gazed out the window, his eyes scanning the desolate street, he witnessed a sight that instantly froze his blood, turning his limbs to ice, his breath catching in his throat. A man clad in a long waxed leather coat, a wide-brimmed hat that obscured his face, and a grotesque mask with a long bird-like beak, walked slowly down the street. His figure, an ominous silhouette. In his hand, he carried a long, slender stick, tapping it rhythmically on the cobblestones. It was the dreaded plague doctor. His appearance was utterly terrifying. A shadowy, ominous figure that seemed to have stepped directly out of a nightmare, a harbinger of suffering. He paused in front of a neighbor's house, rapped sharply on the door with his stick, a sound that echoed in the silence, and then entered, disappearing into the gloom, leaving only a sense of dread in his wake. Thomas knew with chilling certainty that this figure brought no cure, no hope of recovery, only the grim confirmation of imminent death, a final, terrible diagnosis. Alara came to the window, her face starkly pale, her eyes wide with terror. They were everywhere now, she whispered, her voice barely audible. People said these doctors used herbs inside their beaks to ward off the bad air, the miasma. But Thomas knew they could do nothing more than record the dead and perhaps offer some small, futile attempt to alleviate pain, for there was no true cure, no medicine to combat the invisible killer. The pervasive presence of the plague doctors served as a constant, stark reminder of humanity's utter helplessness in the face of the relentless disease, a symbol of their powerlessness. People, driven by sheer desperation, resorted to every conceivable remedy, protective amulets, various herbal concoctions, the practice of bloodletting, fervent, intense prayers, and even bizarre, superstitious rituals, each more desperate than the last. Thomas had heard chilling stories of individuals rubbing live chickens on their buboes, or even drinking animal urine. Acts of utter desperation born from an overwhelming terror, a complete breakdown of reason. Distrust among neighbors escalated to unprecedented levels. No one dared to approach anyone else, paralyzed by the fear of contamination, each person a potential carrier of death. The streets, once vibrant with conversations and laughter, were now eerily silent, a testament to the fear that gripped the city. And the few encounters that did occur were brief, hurried, and filled with palpable caution, marked by suspicious glances and abrupt, evasive gestures, a complete absence of human connection. One day, Alara awoke with a fever. Thomas's entire world instantly collapsed around him, shattering into a million pieces. He touched her forehead. It was burning hot, radiating an alarming heat. Her body trembled uncontrollably, racked with chills. Alara whispered that she was cold, her voice weak and fragile, barely a breath. Thomas embraced her tightly, desperately trying to warm her, to impart his own warmth, but his heart pounded wildly, uncontrollably, a frantic drumbeat of fear. The fear he had so desperately tried to keep at bay was now undeniably within their home, within their very bed, a tangible, terrifying presence. Thomas desperately tried to convince both himself and her that it was not the plague, merely a fever, that she would surely be fine, that they would overcome this, but he knew, with a sickening certainty, that it could very well be the plague. He knew that with each passing hour, the insidious disease could manifest itself more cruelly, more definitively, revealing its true, terrible nature. He rushed to the kitchen, frantically boiled water, and prepared an herbal tea that Master Gregory had given him, meant to strengthen the body, a desperate hope. He gently but firmly forced her to drink it, the warm liquid a small comfort, and then sat beside her, holding her hand, praying as he had never prayed before, imploring for a miracle, for divine intervention, for a reprieve from the inevitable. The hours stretched into an agonizing eternity, each minute a lifetime, each second a torment. Thomas did not sleep. He remained vigilant, watching Alara, observing every breath, every subtle movement, searching for any change, any sign. He meticulously checked her neck, her armpits, her groin, with a growing, suffocating dread, his fingers trembling, searching for any telltale swelling, any suspicious spot on the skin. Each inspection, a moment of agonizing suspense, a test of his sanity. The next morning, the fever was still present, but it seemed to have subsided slightly, a glimmer of hope. Alara was sweating profusely, her skin damp. She slowly opened her eyes, asking for water, her voice still weak. Thomas gently gave it to her. She drank slowly, deliberately, each swallow a struggle. He asked if she was feeling better, his voice choked with a fragile mixture of hope and fear, barely able to speak. She nodded weakly, feeling that the fever was indeed subsiding, a small victory. Thomas took a deep, shuddering breath, a sigh that felt as though it had been held for an eternity, releasing the tension that had gripped him. But the relief, though profound, was brief. He knew the disease was treacherous, capable of cruel deception, of returning with renewed ferocity. They spent the next few days in a state of constant, heightened alert. Ilara's fever waxed and waned, a cruel game, but, miraculously, the buboes did not appear. Slowly, painstakingly slowly, she began to recover, her strength returning by imperceptible degrees. It was a miracle, a profound, unexpected gift from a seemingly indifferent world. Or perhaps, simply a stroke of immense luck in a time of widespread misfortune, a random act of grace. But the experience had irrevocably changed them both. The plague had touched them intimately, reminding them, in the most brutal way possible, of life's profound fragility, of the fleeting, precious nature of every single moment, a lesson etched into their very souls. Autumn eventually arrived, bringing with it a welcome, cooler air, and, with it, a gradual blessed decrease in the plague's virulence. The number of deaths began to decline, a slow but steady drop in the grim tally. The stark red crosses on doors became less frequent, a hopeful sign that the worst was passing. The oppressive silence of the city began to be broken by some familiar sounds, a tentative signal that life, stubbornly and resiliently, was beginning its slow, arduous process of rising again, like a phoenix from the ashes. The wealthy, who had wisely fled to the relative safety of the countryside, began their cautious return, bringing with them a trickle of renewed life back into the city, a sign of returning confidence. Shops, tentatively at first, began to reopen their doors, their owners wary but hopeful, and some markets resumed operation, albeit with fewer goods and still exorbitant prices, a reflection of the lingering scarcity. Thomas and Ilara, though still deeply marked by their harrowing experience, began to venture out of their home with increasing frequency. Master Elias, with a renewed sense of purpose, reopened his office, and work, though slow to return, gradually resumed, a welcome, comforting sign of a return to some semblance of normalcy, a fragile stability. One day, as Thomas walked to the office, his senses more attuned to the nuances of the city, he noticed something profoundly different. The streets, though not yet as bustling as they once were, carried an undeniable air of hope, a lightness that had been absent for months. People, though still cautious and wary, began to converse again, to exchange tentative glances, to offer small, hesitant smiles, a precious glimpse of the London they had once known and cherished, a tentative rebuilding of community. He saw a group of children playing in the street, a sight he had not witnessed in many, many months, a truly joyful spectacle. Their joyful laughter was like music to his ears, a sound of pure, unadulterated life that had been tragically silenced for far too long, now ringing clear and bright. The city was slowly, painstakingly beginning to rise again, carrying the deep, indelible scars of what had happened, but undeniably moving forward, with a quiet determination. The plague had claimed approximately 20,000 lives in London that year, a staggering quarter of the city's entire population. It was a terrifying number, a deep, festering wound in the very soul of the city, a loss that would be felt for generations. Thomas began to write again, but this time, his words were profoundly different. They were no longer merely about the youthful dreams of a budding poet, but about the profound resilience of the human spirit, about the inherent fragility of life, and about the enduring, unwavering strength of love. Lessons learned in the crucible of suffering. One afternoon, Ilara and Thomas took a leisurely stroll to the banks of the River Thames. The river, an eternal symbol of life, commerce, and continuity, flowed calmly, majestically, reflecting the sky. Boats, once absent, began to reappear, bringing with them not only goods, but also a renewed sense of hope, a connection to the wider world. Ilara expressed her profound surprise at seeing the city so vibrant, so alive again, and Thomas gently replied that London would always rise again, that it was inherently strong, and that they, too, possessed that same inner strength, forged in adversity. Thomas knew, with a deep certainty, that the memory of the plague would never truly leave them. It would forever remain a scar on their souls, a constant, poignant reminder of the profound darkness they had faced and somehow endured. But it would also serve as a powerful reminder of the light, of the enduring hope, and of the immense strength they had found in each other. Life in London in 1563 was a powerful testament to the inherent fragility of human existence and the incredible, almost miraculous capacity for overcoming unimaginable adversity. The narrow, winding streets, the timber houses, the pervasive smells and sounds, all became the stark stage for an epic, desperate struggle for survival. The plague had taught them, in the most brutal way possible, that even in the terrifying face of death, life invariably finds a way to flourish again, and that, in the very midst of chaos and despair, love and hope serve as the unyielding anchors that keep them steady, grounded, and resilient. If you have made it this far, it is because the poignant story of Thomas and Ilara has deeply touched you. Stories such as this serve as powerful reminders of our own innate resilience and the paramount importance of valuing every single, precious moment. If you profoundly enjoyed this script and wish to experience more emotional, compelling stories like this, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. Your invaluable support is absolutely essential for us to continue telling these powerful narratives. that connect us so deeply to the past and compel us to reflect profoundly on the present. Winter eventually arrived, bringing with it a biting, relentless cold, but also, paradoxically, a profound sense of renewal. London's streets, though still visibly marked by the countless losses, were now noticeably busier, a testament to the city's enduring spirit. Commerce had resumed its vigorous pace, and the joyful laughter of children, once a rare and precious sound, now echoed with increasing frequency. The city, deeply wounded but ultimately unbroken, had begun the slow, arduous process of healing its profound wounds, a process that was both gradual and remarkably constant, a testament to its vitality. Thomas continued his work as a scribe, but now, every single word he meticulously copied seemed to carry a different, heavier weight. He perceived the inherent fragility of life in every contract, in every last will and testament. Yet, he also discerned the enduring hope, the unwavering determination of people to rebuild, to move forward, to defiantly challenge the very notion of death, to assert life's triumph. Elora, with her nimble, skilled hands, found herself busier than ever. People were in desperate need of new clothes, of meticulous mends, of any small touch of normalcy in their lives that had been so brutally disrupted. She sewed with a renewed, almost fierce dedication, and Thomas saw in her eyes a profound gratitude for each new day. For every single stitch she carefully made, a quiet celebration of life, a testament to their survival. Master Elias, now an even older man, his hair whiter, but with the same characteristic sparkle in his eyes, had fully regained his pragmatism and his dry, good humor. He often recounted to Thomas stories of other plagues that London had faced throughout its long history, always concluding with the same unwavering message: the city always rose again, always. It was a profound lesson in resilience that he had learned and internalized over the course of his long life, a wisdom passed down through generations. The poignant memory of Mistress Agnes and John still lingered, a somber, ever-present reminder of what they had lost, a silent echo of the tragedy that had touched them so deeply. But life, with its relentless, unyielding momentum, continued, and with it, the profound need to honor those who had passed, by living fully, by savoring every single, precious instant, by embracing the future. Thomas began to fill the blank parchments with his own deeply personal words. These were no longer merely poems. They were profound observations, heartfelt reflections on the intricate dance of life and death, on the suffocating grip of fear and the illuminating power of hope. He wrote vividly about the eerie, unsettling silence of the streets, about the pervasive, sharp scent of vinegar and herbs, about the sheer terror of the buboes and the chilling, dark figure of the plague doctor. But he also wrote, with equal passion, about Elira's unwavering resilience, about Master Elias's quiet wisdom, about Mistress Annis's unshakable faith, even in the very face of overwhelming tragedy. His words were a powerful testament, a detailed diary of that terrible year, but also, fundamentally, a heartfelt hymn to life, to the extraordinary human capacity to overcome the most profound adversities. One night, as Alara diligently sewed, and Thomas quietly wrote, she inquired about the subject of his writing. Thomas smiled gently, revealing that he was writing about them, about London, about the year when death had whispered ominously at their doors. But life, with an indomitable spirit, had shouted louder, more defiantly. Alara came to him, reading a few lines over his shoulder. Her eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of profound gratitude, not of sorrow. She found his words beautiful and, more importantly, essential, believing it was crucial for people to remember what they had endured and what profound lessons they had learned. And that, truly, was the essence of it. The plague of 1563 was not merely a tragedy. It was a profound, indelible lesson. A lesson about the inherent fragility of existence, about the paramount importance of community, about the astonishing strength of the human spirit. London, the city that Thomas so deeply loved, had been tested to its absolute limits, but it had resisted. And Thomas, a humble scribe who had become a poet, had borne witness to its extraordinary resilience, and to his own life would, undeniably, never be the same. A certain innocence had been irrevocably lost, replaced by a bitter, hard-won wisdom, but also by a deeper, more profound appreciation for the ephemeral beauty and preciousness of each passing day. Thomas continued to write, meticulously transforming his harrowing experiences into compelling stories, into verses that, he fervently hoped, could touch the hearts of countless others. The pen became his sword, and the parchment his shield, against the encroaching forces of oblivion, against the insidious grip of indifference. And so, the city of London, with its intricate network of narrow, winding streets, its distinctive timber and wattle-and-daub houses, its once bustling markets and now refilled taverns, continued to pulse with an undeniable vitality. The scars of the plague were still visible, etched into the very fabric of the city. But life, with its inherent, stubborn tenacity, flourished once again, stronger and more resilient than ever before. And Thomas was there, a silent observer, an eloquent chronicler, to tell the story. The story of a year when death had walked among them, a terrifying, omnipresent specter, but hope, love, and an unyielding resilience had defiantly refused to be silenced. Years passed, blurring into the tapestry of history. The pervasive, sharp scent of vinegar and the mournful tolling of funeral bells had long since been replaced by the sweet, fresh aromas of spring flowers and the cheerful, vibrant bustle of a thriving city. London had not only recovered, but had, in many ways, prospered anew. New constructions rose proudly, commerce flourished with renewed vigor, and the population, though still carrying the collective memory of the plague, looked towards the future with a palpable, renewed sense of hope and optimism. Thomas was no longer merely a simple apprentice. His stories and poems, initially penned for himself and Alara, had begun to circulate widely. Small pamphlets, crudely printed but eagerly devoured, carried his words, which resonated deeply in the hearts of countless people who had endured the same terrifying ordeal. He had, almost inadvertently, become a chronicler of that tumultuous time, a gifted storyteller who gave eloquent voice to those who had suffered and, against all odds, survived. He was, in essence, a guardian of a collective memory, ensuring that the lessons learned would not be forgotten. Alara and Thomas lived full, meaningful lives. Their hands still toiled, but their hearts felt lighter, imbued with a profound sense of gratitude. The memory of the plague, though still present, was no longer an overwhelming, suffocating shadow, but rather an integral part of their shared history, a hard-won lesson, a constant, quiet reminder of the immense strength they had discovered within themselves and in each other. One day, as they walked through the now teeming market, vibrant with life and activity, Thomas observed a group of children playing with unrestrained joy. They ran, they laughed, utterly oblivious to the deep, invisible scars that the city still carried. One of them, a golden-haired girl, fleetingly reminded him of John. A lump formed in his throat, but it was not of sadness, but rather of a bittersweet melancholy, a recognition of the cycle of life. Life, he realized, continued its relentless march, and new generations would emerge, perhaps never truly knowing the terror that their ancestors had so bravely faced. And that, precisely, was why he wrote, so that they would not forget, so that the profound resilience, the unwavering courage, and the enduring love that had blossomed in the very midst of darkness would be perpetually remembered and cherished. Master Elias, now an even older man, his hair whiter, but with the same characteristic sparkle in his eyes, encountered Thomas in the bustling market. He greeted him warmly as his young poet, expressing genuine amazement at the widespread dissemination of his writings. Thomas smiled, humbly attributing his chosen path to the vagaries of life and the profound, transformative lesson of the plague. Master Elias nodded sagely, his eyes fixed on the vibrant, moving crowd, agreeing that the plague had indeed been a cruel but ultimately necessary lesson, one that reminded them of their inherent mortality, but also, crucially, of their profound strength and the paramount importance of cherishing each and every day. Thomas wholeheartedly agreed. The plague had been an undeniable watershed moment in their lives and in the city's history. It had, with brutal honesty, revealed the very worst aspects of humanity, the paralyzing fear, the corrosive distrust, the rampant selfishness, but it had also, equally powerfully, brought forth the very best, the profound compassion, the unwavering solidarity, the sheer courage to confront the terrifying unknown. London's intricate urban structure, with its narrow winding streets, its distinctive timber and wattle and daub houses, had, ironically, provided the perfect, fertile ground for the rapid spread of the disease. The pervasive poor hygiene, the open sewers, the ubiquitous refuse in the streets, all these factors contributed significantly to the city's extreme vulnerability. But, paradoxically, it was also within these very conditions that the community had, against all odds, united. Neighbors, despite their own paralyzing fear, had attempted to help each other, extending small acts of kindness and support in a silent, profound act of solidarity. Daily life, once so busy and meticulously structured by routines, had been brutally and abruptly interrupted. Markets had fallen silent, taverns had emptied, and churches, once centers of communal life, had become somber centers of mourning and profound despair. But, like a mythical phoenix rising from its ashes, the city had, against all expectations, risen again. The markets once more bustled with activity, the taverns filled with laughter and conversation, and the churches became vibrant centers for the celebration of life, not merely of death. Queen Elizabeth I's reign, a period generally characterized by relative political stability, had been severely challenged by this devastating natural catastrophe. The city's desperate measures, strict quarantine, the grim removal of bodies, the forced closure of public places were all frantic, often futile, attempts to contain the invisible, insidious enemy. The flight of the wealthy to the safety of the countryside starkly exposed the harsh reality of social inequality, leaving the poorest citizens tragically at the mercy of the disease, with absolutely no option for escape. But the story of London in 1563 is not merely a narrative of death and despair. It is fundamentally a powerful story of profound resilience. It is the story of Thomas and Alara, who, in the darkest of times, found unwavering strength in each other, supporting one another amidst the encroaching darkness. It is the story of Master Elias, who, with remarkable composure, maintained his calm and reason, offering a much-needed beacon of common sense in a world consumed by panic. It is the story of Master Gregory, who, despite his limited knowledge and resources, bravely attempted to alleviate suffering, a poignant gesture of humanity in what often felt like inhuman times. And it is the enduring story of Mistress Agnes and John, whose lives, though tragically lost, served as a powerful, silent reminder of the inherent fragility and immeasurable preciousness of every single existence. A haunting, yet vital, echo of the profound tragedy. The plague of 1563 was undoubtedly a dark and somber chapter in London's long and storied history, but it was also, undeniably, a profound testament to the indomitable human will to survive, to adapt, and, eventually, to flourish once again. The scars, both visible and invisible, remained etched into the collective memory. But life, with its inherent, stubborn tenacity, always found a way, always manifested itself, always asserted its undeniable presence. And Thomas, the humble scribe who had, through adversity, transformed into a powerful poet, was there to ensure that this profound story would never be forgotten, that the whisper of death would be remembered, not to instill paralyzing fear, but to celebrate the enduring, triumphant life that, despite everything, always prevails, always finds a way to assert its undeniable, beautiful existence. If you were deeply moved by Thomas and Ilara's harrowing journey through the London plague, and if this powerful story compelled you to reflect on the extraordinary strength of the human spirit, please subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next compelling narratives that connect us so profoundly to the past and inspire us so deeply in the present. And do not forget to leave a like on this video to show your invaluable support. Your interaction is the very essence of what motivates us to continue bringing these vital stories to life, ensuring that they continue to resonate, to teach, and to inspire generations to come.